This is The Real Gig with Bret Alexander.
Hello everyone, me again. Last week I talked about songwriting and how to get unstuck with your songwriting or how to write a song for the first time if you've never done that before. This week I want to talk a little bit about record production. I think I'm going to use an example of a song that I did recently and approach it that way rather than just talk about the concepts behind production. We're just going to mess with a track a little bit that I just recorded, or we just recorded. Paul engineered this track, and I recorded a lot of the overdubs, the later overdubs anyhow. And this is a song called Villain, and I'm just kind of go through a little bit of the thought process when you're producing something, what you might be doing or how you might be making the choices that you're making. Just starting at the beginning, the song's already been written. Maybe you do a little bit of something called like pre-production. Pre-production would just be a situation where you would get together and just kind of run the song, kind of tighten up the arrangement. If there's things that, a section goes on too long, it's in a bad key for the singer, there's a million and one little adjustments that you can make in rehearsal. Basically, a pre-production is like a rehearsal with a referee. You have a producer there kind of overseeing what's going on and kind of pointing out what he likes and what he doesn't, and getting the songs all ready to record. In the case of this song, we did a short pre-production session with myself and AJ, the drummer, but that was it. And then the basic tracking we did, myself on guitar, vocals, and bass player Tim Husty, and AJ Jump playing drums, and we did all of our parts live. And the same day we overdubbed horns, which was Nick Driscoll, and he came up with some brilliant arrangements for this song. So I'll just play you a little bit, just kind of give you the vibe, and we'll start talking about it.
Was a boy in this sleepy town. I was laughed at, picked on, and put down. But now I'm a man and I'm here to say somebody's gonna pay. Oh, just a feeling misunderstood. A product of my childhood. Oh, I'm just a living with a checkered past. The nice guys finish last.
There you go. So that's the basic vibe. What we were going for is a little like a kind of rock and roll, vaudeville kind of vibe. The opening guitar. First of all, I want to talk about the tempo. We do a lot of messing around with. We kind of get the tempo roughed out, and we might move around a beat up, beat two up, beat two down, whatever. Just kind of finding that right pocket for the song. That's a big thing. That's just going to be happening with a click track. Let's see here. It's something like that. Basically, the click track. A lot of artists I worked with, especially ones that are getting into the studio for the first time, don't like having a tempo reference or a metronome because it affects the feel. There are times when the tempo needs to move, and in those times, we'll cut a track with no click. But I'd say definitely the majority of the time, we'll cut with a tempo reference. When it's a bad thing is when you're kind of regarding it the whole time, and it's kind of a distraction, I guess would be the word. I think of it as guardrails. When I'm driving, I'm not distracted by the guardrails, but if I get too close to them, I know I'm out of the lane, I'm out of the groove, so, and after you've spent so many years in studios using a click track, you don't really even notice it anymore. I put it on just to keep me honest, but I really don't notice that a click is on when I'm recording something. So that's that. Some guys like to get creative with it. The song, like John Mellencamp, Jack and Diane had claps. They were using claps for the click. And when they got done with the record, they took the claps out, went to mix the record, and realized they didn't have a record anymore. So the claps you hear on the song Jack and Diane are actually the click track that they left in. That happens too. Another example of that is a producer I love is Daniel Lanois, probably mostly famous for his work with U2, most of the U2 records. I don't know if it was ever, some of the earlier ones I don't think he produced, but I don't know, don't quote me on that. But anyhow, Daniel Lanois, with the album Time Out of Mind, Bob Dylan album, he took a whole bunch of his favorite albums, like from the 40s and 50s, and favorite songs, and had a drummer come in and play along with them, and just all these different sort of swing grooves, and just getting different grooves down on tape. Excuse me. And he would take those grooves. So basically he would put a record on, have a drummer that he trusted, play to the song, and then he would extract the drum parts and then cut those up into little loops and use them as click tracks. So instead of hearing just that little tick, 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 you would hear this actual groove that was a song from the 1950s that would have a certain feel or a certain swing to it that he found appealing. And that would, as I talked to last week, I was saying like Anthony Hopkins putting traits in his characters that never appear. Basically all the musicians would be playing to these swinging, these grooves that would be swinging in a certain way or feeling a certain way. They would all be playing to them, but you wouldn't hear them in the final record. So they would inform what would happen, but not actually be included. So that's really a creative way to use just tempo, a click track, a reference that you're using to play to get a certain feel onto a track ahead of time. It's something you can do ahead of time to inform the track in a way rather than just letting the musicians play to a static beat that they then would just kind of put their own flavor on. Sometimes you want to play with a click track, sometimes you want to play ahead of it. Certain kinds of rock music, punk, anything like that's going to be on top of the beat. And a good player that really knows how to do that will know how to be on either side of a beat, either side of a click track. Like, if you're making soul music or something, it wants to feel a little behind, a little like relaxed. And that's, all those styles have their thing. They all have their, sometimes in the same song, you might want to play on the beat, but you want to pull the fills of the drums behind the beat, or you want to put the bass behind the beat, but you want to put the guitars on top of the beat. And there's all sorts of esoterica that you can use based on the tempo that's being put out there. This song, like, it's called Villain, so we're vaudeville-y kind of campy thing, a little bit of that kind of stuff. Here's some elements here. Where am I at? Like this guitar. Where's my guitar? There it is. All right, so. Yeah, so it has that's a Fender Deluxe with a bunch of reverb on it, overdriven some. And so with that kind of part, the do 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 do, I kind of heard it as almost like a pizzicato string part, if you can imagine that. That would be maybe a cartoon villain or something that was just kind of looking for. That was the lyric, and that was kind of what I was going for, to try to push that story along about this guy that grew up bullied or whatever, and he's exacting revenge. So it's meant to be fun. So that was the guitar part, and then you kind of have this kind of creeping vibe from the drums, which I like, which kind of complements that. We kind of a lot of the stuff we come up with on the spot. Oh, sorry about that. There we go. Oh, that didn't work. There we go. So. Yeah, so you kind of got AJ playing on the rims of the drums, and just kind of this, with this little fill. So it's kind of got this, almost campy, vaudeville sort of feel to it. To give you, just kind of pushing along this little story that we got going on. As time goes on, we add baritone sax. So Nick Driscoll laying that in. It's kind of got this little, kind of got this little kind of creeper kind of part, almost like the Addams Family theme or something. To me, that's bass clarinet, but sort of the same concept. You're kind of going for this sort of groovy rock and roll version of this cartoon villain song. and the bass is kind of laying around with that. So right at this point, most of this is live up to this point. So yeah, like a little bit of a delay kind of thing, kind of a little slappy delay on the vocal. I'm a big fan of that. I use it a lot. Kind of a classic example of early Elvis, rockabilly. It's been used a million times on a million songs. I always think of it as sort of like old slap tape echo on a vocal. First thing I think of is kind of rockabilly. So basically at this point, most of this song is pretty live. We did overdub the Barry sax only because we couldn't put it in the room with the drums, but he could have played it live, obviously. Then we started doing a couple overdubs. We put in a little B3 organ. So basically, I always say with a B3 organ, it's kind of like ketchup. It's good on everything. It's basically just a classic B3 sort of church organ run through a Leslie cabinet. If you've ever been at a concert and see this big wooden box on stage with speakers that are spinning around, that's a Leslie cabinet. It just has this great sort of emotional sound to it that is really great for adding excitement underneath a track. So all these are choices as I was saying about like just production wise, to kind of push this song forward. You know, the real sort of campy on the side stick. I mean, on the rims of the drums, creeper beat, and back to that. My little pizzicato string guitar hook, even though it's a heavier sound, certainly. The B3 just kind of like hanging underneath there. To Barry sax. Just to kind of move the song along. All these, every little choice is considered. I mean, we would go through, spend a lot of time with the drums, getting the right mics on the drums, getting the right specific drums, getting them tuned the way you wanted them, getting them whether you want them live or dead. And this is in these situations, the thing that really helps is if you have a guy that knows his history, so you can kind of bring up references of what you're looking for. If I'm looking for something that's kind of Ringo-ish, or I'm looking Ringo Starr, or I'm looking for something that's like Levon Helm, or I'm looking for something that's Pistol Allen, I'm looking for, James Gadsden. Whatever drummer you're going to mention, you'll hear drummers, if you watch YouTube videos of drummers talking about how they came up with their iconic beats, you'll hear them mention, oh, this is kind of like a combination of the Purdy Shuffle and John Bonham's Fool in the Rain, Led Zeppelin. There'll be like a combo of a couple things that seem not related, and that goes for other instruments too. People are gathering inspiration in their productions and the parts that they want to use from everything. I remember Paul McCartney saying that he sort of got the idea for the string parts for Eleanor Rigby from the movie Psycho, because that's that kind of rhythmic part, and that's for that tension. He used that on a song that was certainly not anything like the movie Psycho. So, but kind of put anything you can get, put it in there. So, yeah, so that's our guitar, bass, drums, basically all live. Barry sax was overdubbed out of practicality, and the B3 was overdubbed because I played that and was playing guitar. So we get into the bridge here. Where is it? I think it's here. So you got a different section here. I think I'm pretty sure we grabbed a different snare drum. Looks like we did right here. Grabbed another snare drum for a little more snare, sort of a cadence sound, and overdubbed that. The rest of the drum kit is live. It's cut up a little bit just for volumes and processing, but it was a live take. The bridge, we're kind of looking to send something a little bit sonically somewhere else, so we brought in, where is it? Brought in another element. Where is that? There it is. Okay, so you can bring in something else in the bridge, just to kind of give it another feel. That's a baritone guitar that we used in that section, just kind of playing single notes. A lot of Beatles records you'll hear in choruses and whatnot, like No Reply and whatnot, where they'll just use low octaves on the piano and compress them just to add impact underneath there. It's kind of a felt, not heard thing. Often with producing, you'll do that for different sections just to get effect, and a lot of that is a lot of what makes those recordings work are these little details that are tucked underneath, and you get really good at recognizing them after you do this for a while. So that was just kind of like a lower register. I like to do that a lot. I like to, if I get to a bridge or I want a part that I really want to, I really want to accentuate a part and kind of give it some weight, I might do something like that. I'll put a baritone guitar, probably more than a baritone guitar. I would put a piano playing the root notes, like an octave piano, just kind of following along. Do that often. Beatles trick. So you have that. You have the Barry sax, baritone, baritone guitar. And then another little string, a tenor one, tenor two. Yeah. So there you hear that whole section without guitar. So underneath all this is this real sort of rich little horn section with the baritone guitar. If you listen to this all together, this goes like this. There is where the bitch and tenor sax solo comes in, which we were very excited about when Nick played that down. So yeah, that's how you build. You're just kind of building a thick little arrangement. There's things going on. All these are choices, kind of based on what you're going for. We're kind of going for combining the horn band thing, a little bit of a vaudeville thing, a little bit of a rock and roll thing, and kind of very intuitively putting it all together on the spot. And like I said before, if you got guys like AJ Tim, Nick, all these that have all this vocabulary to do that on the spot, that's what you want. I mean, and then you can kind of just throw out ideas, and that's music making to me. A lot of producers are more cut and paste guys. They just get everything into the computer, then they kind of create this sort of environment maybe is not the best word. They kind of create this world through processing, moving things around, cutting things up. I do a little bit of that. I did that once on this song, but typically speaking, I don't do that. I like things that exist in nature typically. I love things that are manipulated, but I do enjoy good players and just what happens when you have human beings in the room. I always look at it like I enjoy, like, if you had a conversation between three people and then you just recorded the conversation, or you took them all out and brought them back in one at a time and had each one of them do their part individually. They're not going to react the same to each other if it's not happening all together. Because there was, for instance, like there was a point in this song here. I'm an evil mastermind. Like there was a little stop there, where the groove stops and then a vocal pops out. That was a mistake. We were working on something, AJ played something, so now I want to try that again. And just that happy accident of him stopping at that exact spot, said, okay, we're going to keep that. We're going to put that in the song. Total off-the-cuff thing, and then it ends up in there. I think it was Phil Spector used to run a reel-to-reel tape through the whole session of every session he ever did. I'm pretty sure it was Phil Spector. He ran this tape, so while they're working, somebody did something or screwed up or made a mistake or did something unexpected, he had a recording of it so he could back up and say, no, I want you to do that. So he had so it wouldn't fly by, because a lot of time the guy's just improvising, he's just messing around, or whoever was playing on the gig is just messing around and did whatever. And then they don't remember what they did. So if you have that you have that insurance policy back there with this tape rolling. He could back up and say, it was that. I want you to put that in the chorus, or I want you to take care of this way, even though it was an accident. So it ends up in the song. All right, so I played a little bit of the solo. The solo's awesome. And then we come out of that into another verse and then an outro. So pretty much it's pretty straight ahead form. It's a pretty straight ahead form song. The ending part here, as it goes into the outro, I will talk about for a second. Let's see, I'll go past that a little bit. Yeah, so when I was talking about cutting things up, like for instance, it's like where you can use the tech to do things that would have been when you were dealing with tape and you were recording years ago on a piece of 2-inch tape. It was harder to move things around. You couldn't do it. It's basically recording now is like Microsoft, like a word processor, Microsoft Word or something like that. You could just take things, copy them, and copy paste. Music, it used to be much, much more difficult to do that than it is now. Music is set up exactly like word processing. You can move music around. So anyhow, what you're looking at here is in the middle we did a bunch of solos, right? And we got a great solo, and these are all takes, different versions that we tried. So after everybody went home, and as we were moving along, finishing up the rest of the parts that we wanted to use for the song, I said, man, it would have been cool if we would have had Nick play something in the outro. So we didn't have anything. He hadn't played, only his little section part, but he hadn't played a solo in the outro. So we went back through his original solos and found just a part that we could fly down to here and use it on the end without having to bring him back in. Just for that little nugget to kind of fly things around. And it used to be much, much harder to do something like that than it is now. So yeah, that's basically it. Record production, you're just trying to take in a song or an artist, and you're trying to bring out basically the gist of it. You're trying to bring out the best vibe that you can. It's a tough process to vocalize that's completely natural to me and is completely natural to musicians. It just, after you do it for a while, there's just a vocabulary. If you know the vocabulary and you can communicate with people, and I always said my favorite guys to work with over the years when I worked with producers, they never looked like they were doing anything. It never looked like they were doing anything. They're just kind of talking and making suggestions and just massaging things in a way, just little massages to parts, sounds, instruments, amps, in a way that kind of eventually starts to shape this thing into a killer track. Famously, Rick Rubin barely plays an instrument, and he told the story that when he was working with Johnny Cash, he kept making mixtapes for him, or mix CDs. He would make them and send them, and the song "Hurt," which became probably, well, most definitely the most iconic Johnny Cash track, a cover, certainly one of his most iconic recordings of his late career. And Rick Rubin just kept putting it on first on all these mix CDs of songs that he could do. And Johnny Cash didn't get it. He just didn't get it. And it, kept giving it to him. He didn't get it, and he finally got him to sit down and play it. And that's what a producer does. You can just kind of like take the essence of the artist and find a way, to bring it out, or match the right players. It's like casting a movie. You're matching the right actors, the right cast, the right person to film it, and everything front to back to make this song come out and blow up in such a way that it can have the impact, because it's voodoo, man. You know, it's voodoo. It's hard to understand how it all happens, but when it does, you know it, and you can learn all the tricks, and eventually get to the point where it's second nature. And as time has gone on, recorded music has become much more of a producer's medium than a songwriter's medium. In the 50s and 60s, into the 70s, it was much more of a songwriter's medium. But production has definitely risen in importance next to songwriting, and definitely holds the first position with a lot of music, especially in hip hop and pop music. The songwriting sometimes is kind of getting more pushed back, and the production is as important, if not more important, than the actual songs. So that's it. That's basically it. You know, a little bit of primer on production, using an example of something that I worked on recently. And I hope you got something out of that. And we'll be back to interviews next week. All right. Be well, everybody. Bye-bye.
This podcast was produced by Stone State Entertainment.